Welcome to Reputation Revolution. This is the podcast where we help individuals like you to establish your voice in the marketplace, enhance the credibility of that voice, extend the reach of your story and your message, and finally, extract value from your efforts in building a meaningful personal brand that's both recognized and respected. Now, on with the show.
Welcome to the final episode of Season 6 of the Reputation Revolution podcast, in which we will be recapping our wonderful guests and play sound bites of their interviews. So expect stories, lessons, tips and advice from people who are in the trenches and who are out there building or helping other people build their professional personal brand. It's a bumper episode. Okay, if this is the first episode you're listening to of the podcast, well, lucky you, you'll get a feel or a really good flavour of what we cover here on the show. If you're a regular listener, get ready to be reminded of some of the highlights from the season. Maybe you missed some guests and this might prompt you to go back and listen to those episodes for the first time. Or perhaps you caught them initially and will be motivated to check back and listen to a particular episode again. So, as I said, it's a bumper episode. Strap in. It's all-encompassing. It features a lot of insights and ideas in this one self-contained package. I hope you enjoy it. But before we get into the show proper, just a very little quick plug. Reputation Revolution is brought to you by the Credible Authority Academy. Learn how to become a credible, influential voice in your industry so you can grow your influence and create more impact. Go to credibleauthority.com for more information. If you stick around until the end of the show, we've got a special promotional offer for a brand new course and membership community called Credible Authority Accelerator Plus. We're there to teach, guide and support you on your professional personal branding journey to help you build industry recognition and grow your reputation as the go-to expert or thought leader in your field. And as always, we do this in a way that's strategic, sustainable, and respectful. So listen out for that. It's a really good deal, and you could be saving yourself $440. So check it out at the end of the show. Alrighty, let's get into it. In the opening episode of Season 6, we tackled the much debated topic, business brand versus personal brand. Which one should you focus on? I got together with Sam Osborne and Brendan Keogh to discuss and dissect this question. It's an issue I know a lot of professional business owners struggle with. Now, the two people who were on the panel, Sam Osborne, he's a leading brand strategist who helps businesses drive stronger revenue, branded communication, and customer love. And Brendan, who you may have heard on the Reputation Revolution on a regular basis, he helps me with a lot of recaps of interviews, so he features quite heavily in some of our episodes. Brendan is a marketer and a coach who helps thought leaders clarify their message and create cut-through content that gets results. So, business brand versus personal brand, which one should you focus on? This is a question I get asked a lot, and it's one in which, unfortunately, there is no definitive answer, as there are a number of variables often come into play. But it's definitely worth digging into if you're in business, because as we know, when it comes to all things PR, marketing, communications, and this includes content and social media, clarity is king. Sam, Brendan and I, we provide our respective takes on the business brand versus personal brand theme. Along the way, we also discuss the concept of branding and the critical role it plays, the importance of values, personality, and consistency in building trust, examples of personal brands who have built significantly sized businesses, the role reputation plays in personal branding, leaders of practice areas within a larger firm, how should they approach personal branding? And Sam gets into brand architecture and when to build and air quotes here, house of brands. If you're building a business enterprise around your personal brand, but are wondering whether or not you need to put a bit of effort into marketing an associated business entity, then have a listen to this episode for further insights on the topic. Here's a sample of what we covered.
Brands are like people, values and personality. When you define those as a brand, as a business or a personal brand, you've got to be genuine. So you're taking that identity, you're defining those values and personality traits that are genuine and believable. And that enables you to build that trust, but it's got to be real. And you can't make this stuff up. Otherwise, you're schizophrenic. You've got values that say one thing and a personality that behaves in a different way, and all of a sudden you've lost people. So values, personality, and as I opened up with this understanding of why you're here and what your purpose and point of difference is, they're the three ingredients, at the high level.
Alrighty, that was episode 221. In the next episode, 222, I went solo to build on what Sam, Brendan and I had talked about. It is a hot topic, this one, building your personal brand or your business brand. I felt there was unfinished business from our conversation though. So I subsequently blogged about the topic and had conversations with people on LinkedIn and Twitter. I put my thinking cap on. I went for long walks to gain some additional clarity around the subject. Here I was, I've been neck deep in the PR and marketing arena for many, many years. I'd advised countless individuals, entrepreneurs, professional experts and thought leaders on both their personal and business brands. But I felt I hadn't sufficiently come to any real concrete conclusions to this common issue. It's always been, in my instance anyway, a case-by-case proposition, depending on who I was talking to at the time and what their particular circumstances were. So I decided the best way to help people better understand this branding conundrum and thus have greater clarity as to which strategy would work best for them, personal brand versus business brand, I thought the best way to go about this was to provide some real-life examples of people who have already gone a fair way down the path and then unpack their respective situations. So that's what I did in episode 222. You might want to check that out and check out the examples I give, and I hope you get value from it. In episode 223, I put together another expert panel, and again we tackled a pretty big topic: how to grow your personal brand-based business using paid media and digital ads. With me in the virtual studio, I had Melinda Sampson, who's the founder of Click Winning Content, Kim Wallace, who's the founder of the higher ranking digital agency, and Miles Harris, who's an independent Facebook ads and social media advertising specialist. It was a full throttle conversation, and it took many aspects of the paid digital arena into account. This included, we looked at Facebook and Instagram advertising, Google ads and paid search, YouTube ads. We also covered SEO and LinkedIn lead generation, as well as last touch attribution and remarketing. It was a monster, and luckily I had the real experts in the virtual room with me. I've got to tell you, it's rare to get so much knowledge and in the trenches experience packed into the one episode. An example of one terrific tip came from, I think it was from Melinda Sampson from Click Winning Content. And she said, if you have one takeaway from this episode, it's this: never accept anything AI generated from Google and Facebook for that matter that suggests you take a certain action with your advertising. It might be fine, but make sure you understand first what it means before committing. Lots of gold. That's in episode number 223. Check it out. Jerry Seinfeld once quipped, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. Does that sound right? This means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. Love it. We are always presenting ourselves, our story, our ideas, whether we're speaking on stage or at a meetup or in boardroom meetings, in our video content and podcast interviews. But for many of us, it's not something we like doing, while others don't mind speaking in public, but they make a hash of it because they're not prepared and they don't necessarily take their audience into consideration when they're presenting. So let's cut to the chase. Building a thought leader brand often will require you to communicate your message from multiple platforms today. Not only is it a powerful proposition, but it's also a privilege to be able to present to an audience, whether virtually, in person, on stage, or via our content, webinars, videos, podcasts, etc. This is the topic we chat about in episode 224 of the Reputation Revolution show. And to help us do that, I had in the virtual studio Jackie Goddard, the founder of Power to Speak. Jackie is a creative producer, acting, voice, and presentation coach who helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and speakers get excited about sharing their business ideas. In this episode, Jackie shared how she works with her clients so they can step up and communicate confidently and powerfully on any platform. She explained the importance of knowing why you're there on the virtual or physical stage and what the value is that you're sharing. Your story is your bedrock, she says, and you should be able to adapt it to different platforms. Jackie discusses a number of points. Here's a few of them. The power of gaining insights on what people think about you. She talks about what she calls the criticism sandwich. Why creating a bank of personal examples and stories can give you the communications edge. Jackie recommends starting a story journal and collecting anecdotes and stories. She talks about the importance of having a solid understanding of your audience. She says you want to inform, interest, entertain your audience. What stories can you tell that will benefit them? What do you want your audience to feel? What do you want them to go away and do? What action do you want them to take? And we also cover imposter syndrome and why many people, as per Jerry Seinfeld's quote, are averse to speaking in public. Jackie says we have more knowledge on our subject than we think. So whether you participate in podcasts or panels, meetups, boardroom presentations, workshops, Zoom presentations, or are asked to deliver a keynote address, you'll find this chat with Jackie very helpful, but also inspiring. That was episode 224 of the show. Here's some samples.
Lots of people sort of stand on a stage or in front of people and get nervous because all eyes are on them, which of course they are to a certain extent. But if you can switch that and think, well, it's not me, it's not about me, it's about them. So actually, and I think it was Nancy Duarte who did a fantastic TED talk on speeches and some fabulous speeches, but she kind of put it that, in terms of the hero's journey, you are not Luke Skywalker on the stage. You're not the hero. You are the mentor. So you are the Yoda, and the audience are the Luke Skywalker. So you are imparting knowledge. So then once you know that, then you find stories and anecdotes from your own life and your own experiences that will help them as an audience. So that you are giving value to them. That then kind of so lots of people are worried about showing themselves as very vulnerable when they're sharing these stories, but it's not about you're not dragging up from the depths these traumatic stories of what you've been through, unless they're relevant to your audience. It's not about eliciting sympathy. You don't want to get sympathy from the audience. You want to inform them, interest them, entertain, do all of those things. So it's almost like collecting stories that will benefit the audience rather than yourself. You're not just standing there to tell your story. You're standing there telling your story as a way of imparting knowledge and sharing an experience. People ask me all the time, should I memorize this script? No, please don't memorize it. Bullet points are great. But as soon as you start memorizing something, it's the easiest way to trip up. Because if you write something out and then you've written it perfectly, you've crafted it. We don't speak that way. It's very difficult to speak that way. So yeah, you're best just to make sure you've got all the bullet points. Make sure you hit those points that you really want to make, really need to make. But otherwise, yeah, just as long as you know as long as you know your subject, then you're going to be fine.
In episode 225, we learned how to use press releases to increase personal brand visibility and credibility with my special guest, Mickey Kennedy. He is the founder of eReleases in the US. If you want to crack the media on a decent scale, you need leverage. Generating editorial exposure in traditional media outlets such as newspapers, magazines, radio and TV can do wonders for your personal profile and reputation. But it can be a tough gig. It needs to be approached strategically and requires a fair bit of unrelenting grunt work. Now, as a general rule for entrepreneurs, experts and thought leaders, the best way to go is pitching your story idea to a specific and relevant journalist, editor or broadcast producer. Pitch by pitch by pitch. Quality over quantity. Having a publicist or a media relations representative doing it on your behalf can help, but it costs money to do it properly given the amount of man hours required to do it, to do the job and get results. But there is another method you can employ: press releases, or to be more specific, press release distribution at scale. Now, coming from the PR world, as I do, the press release has its fair share of critics. Indeed, some have even claimed that the press release is dead. Personally, I have a love-hate relationship with it. To be fair, as a tool, the release is okay and serves a purpose. I think the issue is more around the mindless blasting of irrelevant, unprofessional-looking press releases to hundreds of journalists in one hit. We call it in the business spray and pray. So that's the hate part of the relationship. But maybe we shouldn't be so hasty in writing off the humble press release. There appears to be life in the old dog yet. This is why I got Mickey Kennedy on the show. Now, in this particular episode with Mickey, he explained how press releases distributed en masse via an email or wire service can turbocharge your visibility and credibility, as well as generate real business revenue as well. Mickey is an expert at helping small businesses, authors and startups increase their visibility and credibility. He founded eReleases 22 years ago after realizing small businesses needed a press release service that they could afford. Today, eReleases provides entrepreneurs and thought leaders with real-time access to the media and to a national newswire, all with a personal touch. In this chat, Mickey and I cover a broad range of topics associated with press release writing and distribution, including the distinction between wire services and email distribution, what makes for an effective press release, the importance of including a compelling quote in your press release, creating headlines and why you shouldn't get too cute when doing so, the strategic use of press releases, what that looks like and what sort of results you can generate if you do it properly. And Mickey gave the example of how one eReleases client generated 150 articles using press release wire distribution, resulting in $10 million in business revenue. You won't want to miss that one. And why the art of newsjacking is difficult to sustain. And if you go down this path, then having a contrarian view can help you cut through the noise. Says Mickey, a journalist is a gatekeeper and they are deciding what is really relevant and compelling that they can share with their audience. Here is a snippet.
I wouldn't even say journalists are readers anymore. They're skimming. And so you want to have, like the inverted pyramid, your most important elements right there at the beginning, and you just sort of winnow down until you just provide background information that's less relevant later in the press release.
Episode 226 from Season 6 of the Reputation Revolution podcast is one of my very, very favourites. If you listen to this podcast, The Reputation Revolution, even if it's only every now and then, I bet you're probably interested in how you can build your personal brand in a sustainable way so you can take advantage of the myriad opportunities that come with being an active participant in today's reputation economy. Now, my guest in episode 226 has done exactly this and indeed is an active participant in today's reputation economy. He has, over time, built a global profile and reputation as one of the world's leading listening experts. His name is Oscar Trimboli. He lives in Sydney, and we feature his story. Oscar helps leaders and professionals discover the hidden key to better communication. He is passionate about using the gift of listening to bring positive change in homes, workplaces, and cultures around the world. Of note, Oscar is an author. He's host of the Apple award-winning podcast Deep Listening and a sought-after keynote speaker. In this conversation, Oscar tells his personal brand story, including how he left the corporate world and later evolved into the global listening expert he is today. He shares in detail his content strategy across owned, earned, and social media channels, and that is definitely worth checking out that particular episode to listen to. Oscar touched on a range of topics. He explained how he came to the realization he was an expert at listening, how when he got started, there was one clear expert in the space globally, and that he had to educate the market on the importance of listening. He talked about the content he'd produced in the first 2 years and said that it was absolute rubbish, described it as absolute rubbish. He had been focusing on the positive aspects of listening, but he said he wasn't getting any traction because he wasn't talking to their problem, to his audience's problem. He was talking to his hypothetical solution. So a good lesson on that one. And Oscar also talked about podcast guest interviews and how they can result in real business benefits. And you know, as I said, we got in deep. We looked at all aspects of owned, earned, and social media, his origin story, and how everything comes together. But importantly, Oscar runs a business, and he unpacked in our chat how he generates his income and what does that look like. A quotable quote from that episode was from Oscar: "Create content where they, the audience, are at, and break it down as simply as possible and express that in multiple ways." Now, on the Reputation Revolution podcast, we cover the 4 core pillars of building a successful and respected professional personal brand. Number 1, establish your voice. Number 2, enhance the credibility of that voice. Number 3, extend the reach of that voice. And number 4, extract value from the profile and reputation you build in the marketplace. Oscar ticks all of these boxes. His story is a good one. If you're wanting to build a personal brand-based enterprise, then this episode is for you. Episode number 226. Go back and check it out. I think you really like it. And here is some examples or a snapshot so you can get a bit of a taste.
So one of the things we do whenever we run a webinar series every single month. It's completely free. It's called the Deep Listening Ambassadors Community. And the Deep Listening Ambassadors Community, we run one theme every month on a narrow perspective around listening. And whether it's there or the public or private workshops that are run, we always ask one question if we can, or 3. But the one question we always ask is, what gets in the way of your listening in the workplace? Now, I've got over 1,000 of those questions now, Trevor, and about 4 months ago, I went, I should probably put those into a spreadsheet and put them into themes and start a conversation around that. So historically with the Deep Listening podcast, it was monthly. It was interview-based, where we interviewed a workplace listening professional, an air traffic controller, a judge, somebody where listening is a pretty important part of what they do. But what we got feedback from the audience is, Oscar, we love your interview style, but can we hear more from you? And I was like, what am I going to say? So these 1,000 questions have now been boiled down into about 20 themes. And that connects to the theme of our monthly webinar. So, for example, in this month, our monthly webinar is how do you listen on a video conference as a host? So a lot of people go very specific or very generic. I'm very specific when I create that content. And now we have a series of 5 to 7-minute episodes in between the interview formats where we just talk to those questions. So I think the last one we did is, how do you listen for moving the group from a debate to a decision? And that's a common question I get asked by a lot of leaders. When do you stop listening, Oscar? When does too much listening become unproductive, as an example? The other thing is we've created a working document, a PDF called, how to listen, the ultimate guide to listening in a video conference. That's about 55 pages long for the host, and it gives them a series of before, during, and after things to do. Not a technical guide to the video conference platform, but how do you listen in a really effective way on video conference? So I've gone much narrower in the content. Historically, I was probably very broad, where I talked to my model, which is the 5 levels of listening, but in driving the content, and I'm really happy with it. It gets many, many, many fewer views, but the views it gets on LinkedIn is much more engaged, where people go, wow, that I can take that tip away. I'm going to use that tip, thanks. And they're sharing it as well.
Earlier, as we mentioned, we addressed the vexed question, personal brand versus business brand. Which one would or should you focus on? In episode 228, we tackled an equally common question. What's the difference between subject matter experts and thought leaders? To help me dig deeper into this topic, I was joined by the Director of Integrated Product Marketing at Atlassian, Ashley Foss. Now, this is a subject dear to Ashley's heart, and she has some strong views on it, and she's done a lot of homework on it. She's developed a framework that she calls the 4 pillars of thought leadership, and in this episode, in this discussion, she unpacks that framework and its 4 pillars. Pillar 1, credibility. Pillar 2, profile. Pillar 3, prolific. And pillar 4, depth of ideas. Now, with the whole expert versus thought leader debate, this might sound like semantics, but both Ashley and I agree that understanding the key differences between the two, I think, really does matter. Some of the talking points included old school thought leader versus new school thought leader, how some businesses approach thought leadership badly. We're looking at you, SaaS companies, software as a service companies tend to do it pretty ordinarily. Why experts shouldn't attempt a TED Talk, and why thought leaders shouldn't be in customer support. What value do you provide to the audience? It does matter. Why thought leaders and experts need to keep updating their knowledge. And the concept of Expertville versus Visionary Town. Check that bit out. Ashley and I also had a sidebar conversation about LinkedIn and why it's important to be intentional with the content that you post on the site. Plus, we waded into the professional content versus personal content debate that continues to rage on LinkedIn. Here is Ashley in action.
I know some people might be listening and saying, like, this is just semantics, it doesn't matter. And I think where it does matter is it does influence, particularly when you start getting into, I come from business to business software as a service, right? And so we're selling to other businesses. And what I hear frequently, I used to be in startups before this, is people say, we need to do some thought leadership for the founder. And I'm like, okay, what is this thought leadership going to be about? Well, about why our product is the best. Oh, or you're going to do sales content. Like, you want to put the founder's name on sales content. No. If it's the founder, it's thought leadership. And I'm like, okay, again, you don't do thought leadership for either the founder has thoughts that they want to share, or you are going to do marketing about your products. Those are not the same. And what I would say too, when people think about experts, it's the same type of thing. Oh, we need an expert to come in and do the thought leadership. Okay, what are they going to talk about? Well, they know the product inside and out. Once again, they're going to teach somebody how to use the product or implement the product. And that's great. We need to do that. We want an expert to do that. But I think that being intentional about the language that you use flows down into the tone of the asset, the channel that you distribute it on, the audience that it's meant to be consuming it, the action that you want them to take. If you want someone to purchase something, it's not thought leadership. That's purchasing. That's buy intent content. If you want someone to use, the product or tool or whatever it is, that's using the product or tool. That's not thought leadership. And so I think that it does matter in terms of the language, because that flows all the way through the process of creation, distribution, consumption, and action that you want from that audience, and what is the value to them. And so I do think that it's not just semantics. It does matter, and you use them in different ways, right? Like putting an expert on, call it the TED stage, the main TED stage. If they stand up and just start sharing about, the history of whatever their industry is and how they fit into it and that's not the place for them to do that. Versus if you put a thought leader, quote unquote, into, call it customer support, and they're like, what if we think about how might we do this thing, right? The customer's gonna be like, no, my freaking product is broken. I need you to fix it right now. And then you've got a thought leader pontificating about like, what is the future of this problem set even at all? Like, it's very mismatched.
In episode 230, we learned about the power of unlocking and shaping our ideas through deep content. And we did that via or with or in accordance with Sonia Nissen from the School of Valuable Content. To build a credible thought leader brand, you need to be able to unlock, shape, and communicate your ideas. One way to do this is by producing deep content that sparks conversation and attracts an audience. Sonia Nissen is an independent brand strategist and content coach from Bristol in the UK. And in this particular episode, we get philosophical about creating content that matters, what Sonia calls deep content. Deep content, she says, positions you unequivocally as the expert in your field. She says it shows your commitment to your specialist subject, going above and beyond. Not many people will do this. You have the edge. You learn so much by doing it, your expertise will deepen. And it leads to other things. Never underestimate the serendipity factor of releasing deep content into the world, Sonia says. Sonia also touched on the power of intimacy and vulnerability in your writing, and she shared the concept behind producing what she calls stock and flow content. Sonia and I also discussed the different examples of deep content and explained how it can come in many forms. So some great practical ideas and advice in that part of the interview. Here's Sonia.
I think there's maybe a useful metaphor that we can nick from the world of economics to sort of describe the power of this and the need for it. And I found this quite a lot of years back, through a guy called Robin Sloan, but he talks about the need for stock and flow content. So stock and flow as in the world of economics. Flow content is the more, the more ephemeral stuff. It's the blogs that we create, the newsletters we're producing, the social media feed, tweets, or posts that we're putting out on a regular basis, which is all good. And we need that to keep the conversation going. But we also need to balance that with the stock stuff. That's the heavyweight stuff, the thing that sticks around, the books, the guides. But it doesn't need to just be written. It could be, like Sharon and I were running valuable content, our most valuable piece absolutely was the book that we wrote. That was the thing that got us furthest. Alongside that, we had this map, the land of content, it was called. And it literally is the most beautifully designed map. It took so much thought, and I think that's the depth of thought that it takes to create deep content. But it was a way of explaining the content marketing journey that people went on, where they came from, where they tripped up, the path to nirvana, if you like, and where they could get to. And it was those two things that the most powerful things that we created. That's what I'm talking about with deep content. It's something which stops people in their tracks, which you can use over and over again to explain and help and give value to the world.
If you're building a professional personal brand today, there's probably a 95% chance you're on LinkedIn. You might not be as strategically active as you could be, but that's a story for another day. But you at least have a personal profile and are probably publishing some content on a regular, semi-regular basis. If you're running a business, even if you're a solopreneur and the business is you, LinkedIn becomes perhaps even more important. So you want to be able to get the most out of the platform. Okay, so you have your personal profile button down, but have you thought about setting up a LinkedIn company page, or a LinkedIn business page as it's also known? Wait, what? Like many of us, no doubt you're busy enough without adding another social channel to your existing your LinkedIn profile. But hear me out. It might sound counterintuitive creating a company page if you run a personal brand-based business. I mean, shouldn't the personal profile be your focus? Well, yes and no. My guest for episode 232 was Michelle J. Raymond, and she put forth a solid case as to why having a LinkedIn company page alongside your personal profile is a savvy marketing move. Michelle is a B2B social selling consultant and LinkedIn strategist and trainer. She is the founder of Good Trading Company, co-author of the book Business Gold, and host of the Good for Business show. Indeed, Michelle is such a huge advocate for LinkedIn company pages that she operates 3 of them alongside her personal profile. Topics covered in this conversation with Michelle: why it's worth looking at company pages with a fresh set of eyes, why you should think of your LinkedIn company page as a greatest hits album, great analogy that one, tips to grow your company page on LinkedIn, producing LinkedIn Lives, should you do it on your personal profile or your company page? And Michelle also talked about her approach to LinkedIn generally and revealed how much time she spends on the platform. We also touched on LinkedIn audio events and LinkedIn newsletter functionality. Quotable quote from Michelle. Here she is. Stop collecting page followers. It's not inspiring to anybody. Start building your B2B community. Start being the go-to source for your industry. Hallelujah. My interview with Michelle J. Raymond features in episode 232. Check it out. Here is a taste.
2 years ago, LinkedIn had about 3 people in the pages team. It's plus 30 these days and growing faster than you can keep up with. Same with the number of features. So if people haven't had a look at it in the last 12, 18 months, it's time to go back with a fresh set of eyes and have a look. I believe everyone needs one to add credibility to their personal brand. So I'm not someone that says stop doing anything with your personal brand. What I'm saying is keep doing what you're doing with that and get the synergy out of working with the company page and building a brand that actually amplifies that. So it's the whole 1 + 1 = 3 is what I've got going on. So do you get the same amount of reach? Absolutely not. You don't. I can't, there's no magic secret that I can share with people today that will say this is how you do it. But what you can actually do is actually use the company brand to build the personal brand and vice versa. And that's where the magic is. And that's what I like to share with people. What I actually think the main concern people have is if I start doubling up and I've got a page and I've got a personal profile and I've got all this content I've got to create, how do I keep up? I think that actually blocks a lot of people from exploring company pages because they don't want to duplicate how much work they've got to get done. Especially as a solopreneur, you're already juggling so much. So what I like to say is, create the company page and treat it as your greatest hits album, right? You're not going to try and maintain it every day, but when something really resonates on your personal profile and it's an evergreen piece of content or maybe a frequently asked question, then take that and repurpose it and put it over on the company page. Because I think the resourcing problem is actually the deterrent as opposed to the value of company pages. So getting clear about that up front. We don't post it on the same day, so we give it some space and looked as repurposing as part of your content strategy so that you can maintain a presence, because what happens is we're all doing our online stalking, TripAdvisor, Yelp, Google reviews, you name it. Before we hand our money over to a business, we want to check out that it's legit.
Episode 234 focuses on commercializing your personal brand, or what I like to say, extracting value from the profile and the reputation you build in the marketplace. I'm talking here about course creation specifically. This will be of particular interest to listeners who are consultants, coaches, advisors who currently trade time for money and are looking at ways to maximize their revenue without killing ourselves in the process. Scaling up without knocking yourself around too much. My featured guest for this episode was Greg Burgoyne from New Zealand. Greg is the founder of the Course Creators Academy. He helps thought leaders and experts unpack their valuable IP and create an offering in order to scale their impact. In the conversation, Greg and I touch on a number of topics associated with the process of productizing one's knowledge for commercial gain, including cohort-based courses and the stages involved in launching and delivering them, self-paced evergreen courses with or without a community component, plus the hybrid variations, delivering online training into enterprise-level organizations. We also looked at the different types of delivery platforms, and there are many, including Kajabi, Podia. They're all-in-one platforms versus course hosting platforms such as Teachable and Thinkific. There's marketplaces like Udemy, which is known as the YouTube of paid courses. And then we have WordPress plugin options, plus other community platforms such as Mighty Networks that house courses and training, as well as community forums. Greg says it's important when starting out to begin small, validate your idea, then do it live. Don't necessarily productize it straight away. We also covered self-sabotage and people's aversion to the marketing and sales function involved in building a business around course creation. Quotable quote from Greg: who is going to thank you on the other side of stepping out of your comfort zone? Here's a bit of taste of Greg Burgoyne in action.
There's different ways you can package how you're interacting with people. And I think being able to work out, for example, is it at the lead generation end? Can I productize solving a small but painful problem that would lead to more leads in my business by doing that? Or is it a low ticket, sort of $100 to $250, that is going to solve a small but painful problem in a video format, something that's productized, doesn't involve my time? But that still doesn't necessarily solve the time issue. Which is I work with people to create a course plus coaching business model, which is how do I get the best of productization but still keep the customization, but create something that frees up my time. And that's often what people are looking to do. Is I don't just want more leads or a way to create some passive income, although if you go down that route, you can do that. But for a lot of people, it's working out how do I just have more time in my, work with the clients that I want to work with because I choose to, not because I have to financially say yes. And so there's often a sliding scale, which is the bottom end, it's free and then low ticket. And then you've got a hybrid model potentially. And then leave the one-on-one. Most people I work with still want to work one-on-one, but they want to choose when they do it. They want to say, I work with that client because I chose to, because I want to, or that is now a much higher priced thing if you'd like to work with me in that way. There's two main ones that I tend to encounter with people. One is the classic fear of failure, which is this is something new. I haven't done this before. Will this work? Will people buy it? Will people? And I think what you're saying before is so helpful. We can often avoid that feeling by creating an isolation and going, if I just make it really high production, really great quality, I will avoid potential failure, because what you're really doing actually is just pushing further and further out the question of, do people want this? And so, confronting that early on and doing the little validation steps is such a good way of getting over the fear of failure and starting to just share in public, create in public, let people know you're thinking of creating it, doing a webinar, those other things. So I think there's a fear of failure that shows up for a lot of people. But one that's maybe not expected, I think, is a identity challenge. And what I mean by that is I see myself as an authentic coach or consultant who works with people in person. Those people online do it in a way that involves marketing and sales, and it's yucky sometimes, and it's this, that, and the other. Then when you try and step even slightly into that world, what happens is, but I'm not that kind of person. And I encountered this a bunch with, will I have to market this? And will I lose my authentic self? And how do I let those people know that this is genuine, and those sorts of things? And so I think there's a part of realizing that there's other people online who are just like you as well, and maybe releasing some judgment. If you judge people who do things and then you try and step into that world, you encounter a lot of resistance. And I've done this personally, which is, I want to scale my impact, but there's a lot of marketing that I hate, and I don't want to be that person. So, well, good luck resolving those two. So you need to find a way to resolve, how do I scale my impact, and do that authentically.
Episode 236 is a ripper. It was really fun to produce and hopefully to listen to. It's titled Liberated on LinkedIn, How Joyce Ong Uses Transparency and Fun to Cut Through the Noise. Now, we hear a lot today about building our personal brand on social media, about the need to be open and transparent online, not to mention that well-worn word, authentic. But how do we stand out on social media, especially LinkedIn, which, as we all know, is a professional network, where showing up as your real self can be a bit difficult for many people. Yet, we also know that dropping the veneer, getting out amongst it, taking people behind the scenes of our business or our professional life, showing our personality and bringing our whole self to LinkedIn especially, we know this can work wonders in terms of building a profile and getting people to take notice of us, of who we are and what we do and what we stand for. These are all the hallmarks of professional personal branding. So in episode 236, I got onto the show Joyce Ong, who from pretty much scratch has gone from, in air quotes, zero to hero in terms of her LinkedIn presence. And it is a great story. Joyce is a startup founder. She's the co-founder of Tax Nuggets Academy, which produces bite-sized training videos for SME, small business accountants, and tax advisors. She describes herself as an entrepreneur, content creator, disruptor, rebel against boring, and saviour from sucky training. That's her words. In this fun and informative conversation, Joyce explains how she lets it all out on LinkedIn. She details the ups and downs of life as a startup entrepreneur and how adhering to her policy of radical transparency on the platform has helped her not only to stand out from the pack, but also grow her budding enterprise. Joyce walks us through her story from working as a consultant at the Australian Tax Office to running her own training business. Along the way, she prioritised showing up as herself on LinkedIn, a process she found, in her words, liberating. And she also unpacks the thinking behind her efforts on social media. During the course of the conversation, Joyce touched on the importance of authenticity on LinkedIn and why taking people behind the scenes of your professional life can really pay dividends in terms of attracting attention, building an audience, resonating with people, and also generating business. She also touched on the concept of radical transparency and what it looks like in action, how much time she spends creating content and responding to comments. She revealed that for us listeners. And dealing with negative comments on LinkedIn, how has she been able to handle that side of things? Joyce also covered earned media opportunities that come with having a growing profile and how she juggles personal brand versus business brand. Again, that's a recurring theme this season number 6 on the Reputation Revolution show. And she also touched on the success she's been having with her early efforts with LinkedIn paid ads. Joyce is a delight to interview. She also managed to squeeze in a shout out for a role she's got going at the Tax Nuggets Academy, which is a digital marketing manager. That might well be filled now. And she asked, and she got from me some in the moment advice around podcasting. So it was a terrific chat. I think you'll enjoy it. Here are a few examples or samples of the Joyce Ong interview.
Yeah, in one word, what it felt like, liberating. So I just felt like I was held back my entire career. And suddenly when I quit and I did not have a boss and I was my own boss, I just felt like I could say whatever the heck I want, and the lid just came off, and I just, I still remember my first post was like, first Monday, unemployed, self-employed, did not spend the whole day watching Netflix, #winning. And that got like, I don't know, like a few hundred likes. And I was like, hey, I can do this, So one of the things that made us quite successful even early on is radical transparency. The fact that I share our KPIs, business KPIs, our financials, our monthly recurring revenue, and churn rate, that sort of stuff. And I think it specifically really appeals to accountants because we all look at our clients' numbers. And also I deliberately did that because we have a revenue share model, and so I want to build trust and call in, attract eyeballs from potential collaborators to show, hey, we have revenue to share. It goes up and down. So far, it's been going up, thankfully, but it goes up and down. But here, look, we're an open book. Come and work with us. And also, it's great for attracting talent.
According to the Macmillan Dictionary, the reputation economy is one in which the reputation of an individual, product, or business, as decided by the judgment of others, is their most important asset. We're all about the individual here on the Reputation Revolution show. We're talking about the power of the personal brand, folks, and how it's now the biggest asset we have. We need to build it, look after it, protect it, and it's an asset that we can take through our professional life. Now, the way I look at it, why wouldn't you want to put your best foot forward? Why wouldn't you want to influence the perceptions that people have of you? Not in a slimy, fake way, but with authenticity, by adding value and serving others. The possibilities for those individuals who understand the power of reputation and are able to grow their brand in a genuine way, I believe they're endless. But there are roadblocks many of us have. Many people have issues with clarity in how they want to show up in the world. Others have limiting beliefs that hold them back. We can create a pathway for ourselves. We can take control of our professional lives and influence in a positive and genuine way how people perceive us. That's the theme for episode 238, exploring the possibilities that come with today's reputation economy, with personal brand coach Beck Sands. Beck helps exceptional people build personal brands and stand out as the go-to thought leaders in their fields of expertise. She and I explored the possibilities that come with being a thought leader or recognized expert. There were roughly 2 parts to our conversation. Number 1 was mindset and clarity. Number 2 was the opportunities that come with being an active participant in today's reputation economy. In terms of mindset, we unpacked the various roadblocks and how people can overcome them. These limiting beliefs include an unwillingness to change, imposter syndrome, the pursuit of perfectionism. We also chatted about making the jump from career to running a personal brand-based business with the ability to work from anywhere. Along the way, Beck also shared her story, how live streaming every week on Instagram helped her overcome her reticence about appearing on camera. If you're wanting to take your thought leadership journey more seriously, take a listen to episode 238. It will be right up your alley. Here's a taste.
I think the word strategy can be a little bit overwhelming, and people can kind of go, what are you talking, think big, reams of documents. But really your strategy is just what you're going to do versus what you're not. And it's just sitting down and looking like, okay, who am I, what am I trying to achieve here with my personal brand? It might be if you're in a career, it might be that you're wanting the leadership position. It might be if you're in a business that you're wanting to land new clients. And so both of those have a really clear kind of goal, right? And so then you can break down, okay, well then working from there, where shall I go? So who am I trying to reach? Who are my stakeholders here? And what are the channels that I can use to get in front of them? What's going to be the most effective way? And it's different for everyone. If you're clear on what it is that you're wanting to create, if you're clear on what it is that you're actually doing, then you're going to be so much more likely to actually do it. And when you realize that, particularly when it comes to personal brand building activities, you can do things that don't take very much time but move the needle forward massively, right? So one example being, a podcast interview. It might take 30 minutes, but then that is going to be in front of, that other person's audience. That's going to be in front of your own audience. That could reach thousands of people or more. I don't know. And so it's like, that takes maybe 30 minutes, maybe another 30 minutes of prep. Right. But like in that 1 hour, you could do one a month and get in front of however many thousands of new audience per month. Right. So it doesn't need to take hours and hours and hours of time. You just need to be really clear on what your strategy is, who you're going to who you're trying to reach, what it is that you want to say. So what are your key messages? And then just do a couple of things a month.
Okay, here's a question for you. What does it take for a 45-year-old professional to build a following on TikTok of over 190,000 with 10 million likes of his videos? Hint, letting go of perfection and adopting a digital media mindset. Let's face it, it takes time, effort, and planning to build a professional personal brand that people know, they trust, and respect. But sometimes we overthink things. We get stuck inside our own heads when it comes to creating content and using social media to build our profile and our reputation. If you're a business owner or a professional expert with years in the trenches and runs on the board, there's a pretty good chance you might want to get things 100% perfect before publishing anything to social media. It's this pursuit of perfection, this overthinking things around content creation that might be holding you back and therefore stunting your PR and personal branding efforts. This particular episode, the one I'm talking about here, 240, is all around experimentation and taking risks on social media. It's a wide-ranging conversation. By taking risks, I'm not talking about doing anything silly, by the way, just letting it loose, get loose a little bit, showing more of your authentic self, trying new platforms, experimenting with new technologies, developing new skills. There are a lot of good things that come with this. In the case of our guest in episode 240, gaining confidence in front of the camera is what he got from all of that. Now, I call this adopting a digital media mindset because to be really successful with your content on social media, it's as much about mindset as it is about the words you use. So in episode 240, we hear from Ben Cusack. He's a 45-year-old government grant specialist and business owner whose TikTok account has generated over 10 million likes with an audience of coming up to 200,000. In short, Ben takes chances on social media, and it's terrific to hear his story and how he's gained confidence in front of the camera simply by putting himself out there and not taking things too seriously. Ben and I covered TikTok, we covered YouTube Shorts, and also we went into a couple of sideline conversation topics around turning blog posts into videos using AI, content curation on LinkedIn, and increasing personal productivity through outsourcing. If you tend to overcook things on social media and have not yet broken out of this mindset that something needs to be perfect in order for it to be professional, then episode 240 is for you. Let's have a listen.
So I did start a professional account at the same time. So this is two years ago. But so when I had that intern, I was putting out content and I put that on TikTok and it did not fly. No one really followed it because I was putting on LinkedIn style content on, and it was basically like this sort of, conversation, discussion. And probably at the time, a lot of the older, our generation weren't on there as such. They're probably coming on more so now. But yeah, putting on LinkedIn style content, like a podcast or a webinar just does not fly. So it's going to be a lot more raw and probably responding to questions. So when you get a comment, it's very easy to respond to that comment via video. So if you did that every day, that would engage with your community.
In episode 242, we zeroed in on earned media with particular emphasis on podcasts, or more specifically, being a guest on other people's podcasts. Earned media is a term often used by PR folks. In essence, it refers to coverage received on independent third-party media outlets. It's not paid for, but it is earned. Whether you've built your personal brand so well that media outlets are coming to you, or you're putting in the time and effort to pitch your story to the media outlets, it's still earned. You've earned the right for that media channel to quote you, to cover your story, to publish an interview with you. And by media, I'm talking about the whole gamut here. At the top end, you're looking at Tier 1 media outlets such as national and metropolitan newspapers and magazines, commercial radio and TV. Then there are what I call Tier 2 media. That'd be vertical magazine titles, mainstream blogs, industry publications. Let's keep moving down the media ladder until we get to micro media, and that is those niche online channels that are often run by passionate individuals and or people running small businesses. We're talking here about podcasts, YouTube shows, live streams, blogs, and email newsletters. It's this lower tier of niche media that we dig into in this episode with a strong focus on podcasts. We allude to the other types of channels, but podcasting is where it's at in this episode. How to extend your reach by becoming a guest on other people's podcasts. And to help me unpack what it all means and how you too can build your personal brand by being on other people's podcasts, I was joined by Shelby Yorner, and she is the Chief Publicity Director at Zilker Media in the US. Shelby is an expert in pitching podcasts. She has led Zilker Media's PR team to reach 2.5 million listeners in the past 2 years alone, booking over 100 different podcasts for Zilker Media's clients. If you're keen to extend the reach of your voice and grow your influence beyond your own personal network of friends and connections, then this episode will be of interest. The micro media channels may be small, but they can be powerful, and there are no shortage of opportunities available for savvy experts and thought leaders. Episode 242, check it out. Here is a sample.
I mean, there are so many podcasts. It's really hard to find the right ones. Even if you have a podcast database, we use Podchaser, which I really, really like. There's still a ton of podcasts and it's hard to find the right ones. I think it's important to look at your audience, who you're trying to reach, and see what podcasts they're interacting with online and use that as a starting point. If you find one podcast that is a fit, you can go to the page on Apple Podcasts. You can scroll down to the similar podcasts and you can kind of go down a rabbit hole that way. I know a lot of people always ask, how do I know if it's a good podcast? Like, quote unquote, what does that even mean? But again, if someone has a lot of reviews on Apple Podcasts, that's kind of a good way to just be able to quickly see if it's established or not. But again, you want to look at the host on LinkedIn. Do they seem like this is going to be a connection that's going to be relevant to the goals that you have? Look at their previous guests. Look at if they even take guests. I think that's an issue that a lot of people have. They're like pitching these podcasts that don't even take guests. Like, is the podcast still relevant? There are so many podcasts that are on hiatus or defunct. That's the biggest advice we have when people are pitching themselves to podcasts, which I do think is something that people can DIY. I think it's a great way to DIY your own publicity, but listen to a bit of their latest episode. So once you find those podcasts that your audience is listening to, those are some ways to quickly vet. But I think the best way is listen, is this a host that you think your client or you are going to drive with, that kind of thing.
Episode 246 was an in-depth case study, all based around how lawyer and business owner Alex Martin uses LinkedIn, podcasts, and the media to build strategic visibility and trust in the marketplace. It is a ripper, folks. I really enjoyed this one. Now, 12 months ago, Alex's personal branding endeavors largely revolved around in-person networking, but as he says, you can only shake so many hands. He also published the occasional post on LinkedIn, but not with any purpose or direction. But Alex is an action taker. He knew he needed to raise his profile and position himself as an expert in his space if he was to build his professional reputation and that of his legal firm. So Alex went back to basics and started following a strategic plan. Having a plan, he says, makes a lot more sense and has a lot more impact. Today, Alex takes an integrated approach to content across owned, earned, and social media channels. On LinkedIn, he regularly publishes videos that address the common challenges and pain points faced by his audience, who is owners of growing medium-sized businesses. Plus, he uses the platform to share commentary on relevant commercial legal issues that are covered by the media. But that's just one leg of the three-legged, in quotes, media stool. While steadily building his presence on LinkedIn was an important first step that has resulted in Alex more than doubling his following on the platform, he has also branched out into the other two legs of the media stool, which is owned media and earned media. So Alex hosts a regular podcast with a financial advisor. It's called A Lawyer and a Financial Advisor Walk Into a Bar. He also publishes videos to YouTube, writes articles for business magazines, and is a regular expert interview guest on commercial radio and national television. Critically, Alex is only 12 months into his personal branding journey, but he's doing it in a way that's both strategic and sustainable. The runs on the board are piling up, and he's starting to really get noticed in legal circles for his commentary and his content efforts. Even one of his clients texted him after he emerged from a broadcast studio after giving an interview to say how he saw him on TV. So Alex was rapt about receiving that text from his client. In short, Alex has had a big year in terms of creating content, being in the media, and building personal brand visibility. This particular episode is an all-encompassing conversation. It's not about doing the one thing and knocking it out of the park. It's about blending many of the key elements that come into play when strategically building one's profile and reputation. Alex has done that and more. Here is a snapshot of that interview.
We do very regular stuff on LinkedIn, and we actually do all different stuff on. It's not a matter of we just do a ton of videos and put out a video every week, right? Which is what I thought prior to really talking to you and learning a bit about all of this stuff. I thought, what you do is you just do a video a week and you chuck that out on LinkedIn, and that's your promotion, big tick. And that's why it didn't work previously, because that's not what it's about. The first thing you got to do is work out, well, who are you? Who are you talking to? Who are your ideal client? Where are they? All that sort of stuff. What are you actually trying to say, and who are you trying to say it to? And who are you genuinely, both in terms of as a lawyer and as a business and as an individual, right? So you work out what you want to say, and then where you're going to say it. LinkedIn, we do some behind the scenes stuff. So we show, if we're going to do a seminar, we show what maybe us preparing for the seminar. And funnily enough, often the preparation for the seminar stuff is more interesting and popular than the actual seminar itself. We do, if we go to events, we promote that or take a photo of it or whatever. But probably the main thing we do is I comment on what's going on in the media that's of interest to people. So, whatever's happened that week, if there's something that comes up that's relevant to business owners, to dispute resolution, to business law, then I might just make a comment on it, but it's an informed comment, a helpful comment, a comment that, hopefully is insightful. If I've got nothing insightful to say about it, I don't. I want to, really offer my own perspective. And then I also do quite regular videos and the kind of no bull videos, which I put up, which are just things, it's regular issues that come up for my clients and my connections that I see, like say on poaching, for instance, which we mentioned. Poaching is such a common issue at the moment. I might do a video on, well, what is poaching and, how do you prevent it? Sort of educational content, not heavy on the legals. It's really practical tips on how to avoid poaching, what it means and what you can and can't do, so that my, clients and connections kind of build up a relationship of trust with me, that I'm there, I've got their back, I'm helping them with, I'm just helpful. Helpful is the right word. LinkedIn was the way we kind of almost experimented with that. You put up things on LinkedIn that, and you see what people are interested in. And we found if there's things that are sort of in the news, there's something in the news that week, a business collapse or a high profile dispute or something that, we could have a comment on and be helpful about. So LinkedIn's kind of the testing ground, and those sort of things that I would post on LinkedIn that were popular, I then started submitting to the media as story ideas. And so the challenge is trying to link in what the media is interested in, which is, the media was mainstream media, so they're not going to be interested in the latest changes to the Corporations Act. They're going to be interested in the Ben Roberts-Smith defamation case, right? Which is a big commercial dispute, which is right up my alley. I could have handled that case. That's a big Supreme Court commercial dispute, which I could do. And I can comment on it. So we started submitting media stories. So there's a bit of work in that. You've got to obviously know what's going on in the media, and you've got to have your own take on it. So building that content and knowing what your own take is that's a little bit unique is very helpful. And so you submit stories, and then of course you get a nibble. So we did some radio, some interstate radio, which was the first. I got invited to be interviewed on some of these topics, and then you do some more mainstream radio, and then that sort of I ended up doing a lot of radio. I've got a regular radio. It's not regular, but I'm asked all the time on 2CC, which is the Canberra radio station, and I've been on it maybe 10 or 15 times. And then, I've done some for Triple M, and I've been on the radio with 3AW. And then you pop that on your website, you pop that on, you send that to people, that becomes part of the content. Again, if someone brings up and asks a question about defamation, you say, well, here's the interview I did on defamation, which has got to help.
By way of disclosure, I worked with Alex throughout 2022 in helping him focus on the content that matters, ensuring that his personal brand stayed on track and that everything he did from a social media and earned media perspective enhanced his professional reputation in the marketplace. Of course, this meant I had insight into the behind the scenes of Alex's journey, which makes this conversation all the more illuminating. So check it out. I think you'll really love it. Alrighty, moving on to episode 248. This was the one before this one. This episode's 249. It carried the title From Safe and Soft to Doing the Hard Things, how brand strategist Mark Drager built a YouTube show generating 4 million plus views. One of the trends I've been highlighting for a while now is producing a destination show instead of simply doing a podcast or just a YouTube video. Add a bit of meat to it, theme it, make it multimedia so people can listen to if they prefer that, or watch it on YouTube, or read about it if necessary on a blog. Cut it into snippets to share across social media. Give it a name, create a sub-branded media property, as I've been calling it for years now. Turn it into a platform with editorial integrity. It's a destination show for a couple of reasons. A, people go looking for it. They subscribe to it. They opt in. It's a regular thing in terms of their content consumption. And B, with all the bite-sized snippets you're putting out there, micro videos, quote cards, photos and images, pithy lessons learned, these all act as digital breadcrumbs to draw people back to your show. It's the destination, as it were. It's a doorway into your personal brand orbit. For some people, it's how they find and interact with you. So if you're an entrepreneur, a professional expert, an emerging thought leader, and you want to take things up a notch or two, creating a show is potentially something you might like to think about. This is the key theme of episode 248, and my guest was brand strategist and agency owner Mark Drager. Mark produces a combination YouTube show and podcast called We Do Hard Things, through which he delivers terrific interviews with big names in their respective fields. I'm talking Lisa Bilyeu, who's the co-founder of a $1 billion company called Quest Nutrition. The motivational speaker Les Brown, TV presenter Charlie Borman, who did the Long Way Around series with Ewan McGregor, the author and podcaster James Altucher, and Anthony Trucks, a former NFL athlete and American Ninja Warrior. Mark's YouTube channel has generated close to 4 million views, and his podcast continues to grow in leaps and bounds. How does Mark approach the production of such a show, and what motivates him to put himself out there to play big and be bold? Our conversation covered a lot of territory, and it zipped along at a decent clip. Mark discussed a number of topics. Here's some of the talking points. Why being safe and soft was the impetus to create his show We Do Hard Things 2 years ago. He says it's for dreamers and entrepreneurs who need to hear the stories of people who have the courage to put themselves first and pursue their passions at all costs. He discusses how he secures high caliber interview guests, entrepreneurs, athletes, professors, authors, or as he lovingly describes them, badass people. He talked about how getting your pitch right can help you stand out and the differences between the video and audio only experience and how that affects how the show is produced. And he also chats about the reason why he's going all in on YouTube. He says, we are producing a level of assets. I want this to look and feel like a television show. And one thing I found really interesting that Mark talked about was what he calls the storytelling technique, which he has found useful in developing his interview style. So check that one out. We also addressed the vexed question, should a lawyer produce a podcast about coffee? And I think you might find that Mark's answer might surprise you. This is episode 248. Here is a snapshot.
Here's why I did things the hardest way possible. I'm a fan of podcasts. I love podcasts. And since like 2007 or 8, I've been listening to everything from all of the different podcast networks, from NPR. Like I super geek out in terms of who owns the networks and what are they doing and what are the new shows, and I love it. And I love what we can do with audio and what we can do with space and how we can weave in and out of stuff. And so I created We Do Hard Things, and if you go back and look at early episodes, it was just about the conversation. And then I was like, oh, there's not enough context, and it's going too fast. Let's slow things down a bit. Let's have some background music weave in and out. Let's do some like NPR style breaks, right? Like, and then on YouTube, our retention completely crashes through the floor because on YouTube, someone finds your video, they see the thumbnail, they see the thing, they click it, and you better give them value in the first few seconds, otherwise they're bouncing. And if they bounce, your retention tanks. If your retention tanks, YouTube won't show this to anyone else. So then suddenly we get hyper quick again. Okay, it's about retention. But then the audio experience now feels so rushed. It's like no one wants to listen to this thing. And so our audio numbers just tank. So then we go back and slow things. And so I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, oscillating for about 18 months until I was like, hey, dummy, you got to produce 2 different things for 2 different audiences, right? TikTok is not LinkedIn and LinkedIn is not YouTube. Well, guess what? Our audio listeners who are out in the world, they're exercising or they're running errands or they're sitting in traffic or they're sitting on the tram or they're folding laundry. They're, listening to an audio podcast is a secondary thing. Watching something on YouTube, it might be playing in the background, but it can't be a secondary thing because it's just a medium that typically, unless you're on YouTube Premium, requires way more of an active effort. And some people listen to stuff and some people don't. So we just now produce 2 different versions, one for each. And neither's right or wrong. Neither will kill the other one. Neither one is going to take over.
Alrighty, well, thank you for listening this far for episode 249 of the Reputation Revolution. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, we have announced the launch of a new course and membership community over at the Credible Authority Academy. The Academy, like everything we do here on the Reputation Revolution show, is geared around helping you to build your professional personal brand in a way that's strategic, sustainable, and respectful so you can position yourself to take advantage of all the benefits that come with being an active participant in today's dynamic reputation economy. Okay, so what do we know? Well, we know that most vision-led entrepreneurs struggle with getting their head clear on what content to create and where to start with raising their profile. I've created Credible Authority Academy to help fast-track your efforts in building industry recognition and growing your reputation as the go-to expert or thought leader in your field in a respectful way. When you develop genuine credibility and influence, you will create greater impact in the marketplace. Go to credibleauthority.com, scroll down a little bit until you come to Credible Authority Accelerator, the program Credible Authority Accelerator. There is a special deal going. It finishes up on February the 12th, 2023. It's to kick off the year. And what happens if you purchase before February the 12th, 2023, if you purchase Credible Authority Accelerator, the program. You will be upgraded free to the Credible Authority Accelerator Plus. That means you're getting another 12 months membership of live training, Q&As, an online community, and a private podcast. There's a whole stack of extra goodies valued at $440. So get in before February the 12th, 2023. We kick off the program on February the 13th, and you get not only the 6-week online course that you can learn at your leisure, but it's designed for 6 weeks. But you also get upgraded to Plus, the membership and training community, and that you've got 12 months access to that. So that's the bonus. It's worth $440 on top of the program, and that's how much money you'll be saving. Worth a look. Go to credibleauthority.com. As I said, scroll down to the accelerator program, hit the learn more about that, and it will take you to the page where the promotional page where you can upgrade and to the Plus membership. And if you like, I'll also have the link in the show notes. So if you want to go directly there and click it from there. But thank you for listening. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back soon with another bumper episode. This was a bumper episode, but we're going to have another bumper episode because it's going to be episode 250 of the Reputation Revolution Show. Thanks for being a listener. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
The reputation economy is here. The world today needs more genuine, credible experts and leaders to stand up and share their experience, their wisdom, their stories and ideas. Are you in?